Hey BookTube, I have some horrible news. We will not be at the Orange County Zine Fest any longer. The control arm and bushings on my car broke. So, we are not going, and I'm upset. Everybody's upset. Um, we're all upset. So, yeah. So, I'm just trying to cheer myself up a little bit with a little bit of Friday Red. This is the stuff that I actually got to and finished this week, as opposed to just stuff I got to. I'm hoping the dogs don't look me directly in the face, because they will bark. Gizmo behind me, if you look to the over this shoulder, I could probably look right at him and he wouldn't even know I was there. He's pretty old. So let's get cracking here, shall we? So first, we have Batman Rebirth Volume 3, I Am Bane, written by Tom King, art by David Finch, Danny Mickey, and Jordi Belair. This was good. If you are familiar with what is going on in the pages of this and the pages of Detective Comics during this time, it'll be really good. But there is something that happens in, I believe it's the end of the first volume of Detective Comics, that has not a small effect, but there's an effect it has on the events of this book. And it's brought up, and if you haven't read that, you're not going to know what the hell they're talking about. And it's also a spoiler. And I don't mean that as a pun, if you know what I mean. If you don't know what I mean, then you don't know. But anyway, so it's good. It has a lot of the things that Tom King has kind of made himself known for. So, like, for those of you who have, like, read The Wedding, where it's Batman writing a letter to Catwoman and Catwoman writing a letter to Batman, and it's, like, back and forth, like, each line kind of thing. He does kind of the same thing here with how Bruce Wayne and Bane were brought up. And this happens a lot in here. But there's some great stuff. Oh, can't show that. It's a bit of a spoiler. But my favorite bit is, like, the last issue of the actual storyline, where Batman hides in Arkham Asylum and releases all the inmates, so that as Bane comes in looking for him, he gets, like, he basically has to get through all of them. Oh, and it's not the last issue of it. It's the second to last. It's pretty good. Sorry, I'm, like, looking through this again. Anyway, this was really good. I liked I Am Suicide better, I think. I don't know why it bothers me so much. And then the rest of it. So, like, as you can see, you have this much here, which is the actual I Am Bane story. And then the rest of it here is a bunch of, like, it's the annual, and is it the rooftops bit? I don't know if that was in this one or the last one. But it also has the Swamp Thing issue, which is really good. Um, but it's right when the Button, if you know what I'm talking about, the 2-issue Button arc came out, right in the middle of this. So I think it was right after Bane, or yeah, something like that. So there is like kind of like a break, and it almost feels like a different issue. So with everything said, I think I gave this a 4-star for those of you who like stars, but it's, I like, normally it would be like a 3.5, I would think, on Goodreads is what I would have done it, but you can't do halves because I Am Suicide was better than this, I think. So yeah, so that was that. And then I got into Amtor, which is Venus. So Edgar Rice Burroughs. Now, this book was written, I want to say, nearly 20 years after the Barsoom books started. So, a few things had happened in the world of science. A few things have happened had happened in the world of fantasy and science fiction. A lot of the pulps that were doing science fiction were trying to do more scientific based science fiction and more hard science. Planetary romance, I feel, was kind of dead by this point. Sword and Planet wasn't as big as it was, like, even 10 years before. So this book is really strange. It was different than any of the other Edgar Rice Burroughs, like the Barsoom series, the Caspak series, the Pellucidar series. I know I'm forgetting one. Oh well. But it was just different in that I think I even have said this before, the science he was trying to use, he spent a lot of time trying to, like, explain space travel and explain how it works and explain that the characters in this were smart enough to figure out these things. And what that did was just take a lot of time away from the storytelling because it wasn't very strong. And I mean, yeah, it's like freaking like 90, 80 years later. So of course the science isn't going to be spot on or nothing like that. But it's dated. It's very dated. Like, this is kind of the first time in an Edgar Rice Burroughs book where I was like, oh shit, that's super dated. And that took me out of the story because when I've read other Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff, I never think about when it was written. I never go like, oh yeah, astral projection. That is so 1911. Like, none of that ever happens. So, and then, like, when stuff takes place during, like, the World War or something like that, and you're reading it like that, it takes place during World War One. So it's like, that's not a stretch, because you're thinking about it, oh, it's taking place during the war, and that's fine. But when something like this comes out and they're talking about rocket ships and how they fire up and all this other shit, and then he's like, oh no, I'm gonna crash into the moon. I didn't think to, like, add the moon into my equation for how to get to, because he's trying to get to Mars and he ends up in Venus. So even after all the nerdy stuff, he fucked up. And the way, this is a plus, I will say, the way Venus is described and how there is life on Venus and how we didn't know, and how the people of Venus have no idea that there is anything beyond their atmosphere. All of that actually worked out and made sense and was pretty awesome. So I will give it points for that. The first chunk of this book, I would say the first half of the book, is very slow. It has to do with Carson Napier, who's the main character here, learning about the culture of Venus and kind of how to integrate himself into the world. So it's not like boring, but it's a lot slower pace than the rest of the book. And once the action starts, it never slows down. It's like, and it's nuts. And it ends on a cliffhanger, which is good because I think there's like 7 books in the series, but the cliffhanger it ends on actually takes place on a cliff. So that's kind of fun. And at the end of it all, it is definitely more of a romance story than... because, like, planetary romance in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean there are romantic elements, like boy meets girl, boy loses girl, blah, 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 blah. Like, that doesn't have to be in there. This one, that is a huge part. And, I mean, a lot of Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff is really based on the fact that there is a love interest and all this other stuff. But this one, the love interest in it feel as serious as other books that he's done has, but it makes sense in how it's done. And the ending of this book is very much rooted in that romance. And so with that said, it is very well put together. And talking about it now, I like it more than I did when I was reading it. Kind of just like thinking back. I finished it last night, and I don't know. I had really high expectations, and I think that's what my problem was. And I don't know why I had those expectations. It was probably because it was like, ooh, pirates, Venus, flying dude, chick. Like, whew. Let me tell you something. So, I don't know, like, I would definitely give this a read if you are Edgar Rice Burroughs completist, for sure. But if you haven't read the John Carter series yet, or the Pellucidar series, I would say go to those first. But I might change that because I'm not 100%, but I think as these books go, it stays with Carson. Whereas in the other Burroughs series, with the exception of Tarzan, it kind of like breaks off and goes with other characters from the main character. Like Barsoom, the first 3 books are about John Carter, and then it like breaks off, and then by like the second to last book or the last book, it's back to John Carter. It might actually be the last book, and that's like an 11 or 12 book series. Tarzan, it breaks off. He's always a part of it, but he's not like the main focus for a few books, and then it comes back around to him. Like I think by like book 9, and I think there's like 24 books in that series. So like, and then Pellucidar, David's in and out of those books. The Castback books, it's a trilogy, and every book has a different main focus, although all the other people are mentioned and come in. So I really think there's 6 or 7 books. I think the 7th book was 2 novellas sandwiched together, so we'll say 6. But I really think he's in all of them, and that'll be a lot of fun, because when I'm reading a series, I want that continuity. So we'll see. But yeah, so I might change that opinion for this being only a completist thing. So let me know what you think down below. Please give your condolences to my car, the Matmobile, and yeah, let me know what you think down below. Like, subscribe, high five me, and I'll see you later.